intended to embarrass Donald Trump that doesn't deal directly with the case. So it's a difficult place for the defense to be in.
The former president right now, he did want this opportunity to talk, and he's got it.
So this was a very big day, a very revealing day. As you see, their case is totally falling apart. They have nothing on books and records, and even something that should bear very little relationship to the case. It's just a disaster for the DA, for the Soros-backed DA. It's a disaster. This whole case is just a disaster. If you read the legal scholars, you'll see, because they're writing about it, they've never seen anything quite like it. And neither have I. I should be out campaigning right now. We're leading in all the polls. I'd like to be campaigning. We'll be leading by a lot more. But I just want to appreciate the job you're doing. It's not easy standing there all day waiting, but you're hearing the same things that we're hearing. On another matter, as you know, it's Biden's backers that seem to be funding what's going on with the Palestinians, but probably not Palestinians, agitators, bad agitators, really bad. And I think our government ought to find out who they are, where they're from, and treat them the same way as they do the J6 hostages. You got to treat them the same way. These are agitators. They're really hurting our country. It's happening all over the country in cities. You saw what happened last night at the Metropolitan Museum. These are agitators. And in some of the colleges, I think it's about 20% student and 80% others. So this is a big problem, and they better nip it on the bud. And it's a problem from the left, not from the right. This is a problem from the left. And I hope you can stress that. The economy is not doing well. You see inflation is through the roof. They're not going to be able to lower interest rates. If they do, it's purely political. But it'll be very bad if they do. From the standpoint of getting rid of inflation, you have to get rid of the inflation. Inflation, as you probably have heard me say, it's a country buster. It busts countries. And it has for 1,000 years. You go back and you look at old-time Germany, you look at a lot of countries that went through the kind of inflation we're going through, and they're busted. They are just broken up in many cases into little pieces, and that's what could actually happen to us. So we have to get inflation under control. We have to get prices down so that people can breathe, people can live, so they can live. But again, this was a very revealing day in court. Any honest reporter would say that. I would recommend you read Jonathan Turley and Andrew McCarthy and Alan Dershowitz, Greg Jarrett, Mark Levin, very talented people, and others. There's some incredible people out there that are writing about this trial. They're calling it a disgrace. It's a disgrace. In the meantime, I'm stuck. I'm here. Instead of being in Georgia, instead of being in New Hampshire, instead of being in Wisconsin, and all the different states that we wanted to be in, we're not able to be there because we're stuck in this trial, which everyone knows is a hoax. Thank you very much. Thanks for ruling today.
Should there still be a mistrial?
Why is the case a disaster?
All right, you never know if he'll say anything in response to questions thrown at him here. The court trial today has ended for today. There'll be no trial tomorrow. Stormy Daniels resumes her testimony, we're told, on Thursday. But to Andrew Joukowsky's point, Rebecca was touching on it as well. I'll let Andrew button that. He did not mention Stormy Daniels' name. In fact, he didn't mention any specific testimony at all today. Spent more talking about the macro landscape, all these protests, what's going on with inflation, et cetera, et cetera. That's probably a smart strategy. What do you think?
I think that we were talking about the jury just before he started to talk. I think that juries tend to lose patience with prosecutors. We're now 2 weeks into this trial. There's not evidence of a crime. And now we see the prosecutors going for low blows. I don't think that the jury would take anything away from what happened today other than these are low blows that make no difference to the overall matter that's at the heart of things. So I don't think prosecutors are gaining points. In fact, I think that they are losing points in the jury's mind. mind and quick.
All right, but we knew what we were getting into, right? I mean, and the prosecution had to know what we were getting into, and maybe that's by design, Rebecca, but when you have one of their star witnesses, Stormy Daniels, essentially confirming that there's no love lost between the two, that is between her and the former president, that he said a lot of awful things about her, she felt compelled to say a lot of awful things about him, quoting, "I call him names because he called me names." I have two sons who go at it like that, but what did you make of that?
Look, it's ridiculous. What it does, though, is allow the defense to question her and now question her credibility, question the reason she's appearing, the reason these stories that cannot be confirmed about a parking lot encounter, about an encounter in a hotel room, they cannot be confirmed. Questioning what is her motivation. Is it money? Because it seems that she does make a lot of money when she talks about the former president. So it does allow for the defense to have something to counter the prosecution's ridiculous line of questioning and the judge allowing this ridiculous line of questioning. The defense is doing a great job in presenting the fact that this woman has a very big reason to testify and to talk about Donald Trump. It's called money. And that's what she makes
That's right.
when she talks
And
about
that's exactly
the
what it
president.
is about.
All right, guys, I
Money.
want to thank you both for
Shamefully.
weighing in on all of this.
No
We're gonna
justice
take
in the
you inside
justice
that courtroom,
system.
what was going on, or Lydia, who was there, and could kind of give you an idea of how people were reacting and what she was seeing, even from the former president, as Stormy Daniels was testifying. To be in there is very different than to hear the notes and annotations you get from what was going on in there after this.
Okay.
You've heard about what Stormy Daniels was saying inside the courtroom. How would you like to be watching it play-by-play inside the courtroom? Our Lydia, she joins us right now from the New York State Supreme Court. Lydia, we know a lot of the stuff that was said and the allegations that were made and the back and forth of what she thinks of Donald Trump and all that. What was it like seeing her? And did you get a chance to see Donald Trump and his reaction to what she was saying?
Yeah, great to be with you, Neil, this afternoon. I was in the main courtroom, sitting kind of toward the back of the room, and it's quite a large room. And from that vantage point, I was able to see Stormy Daniels, and I could also see our former president, Donald Trump, enter the courtroom and exit. Seeing Donald Trump's facial expressions during the actual trial and events was difficult, but I was able to have a good visibility of Stormy Daniels. And I have to say, when Stormy Daniels entered the courtroom today, you could hear a pin drop. Every person was still, as if sitting with bated breath, just waiting to see what was going to unfold. Stormy had to enter the courtroom and walk behind Donald Trump and the defense attorneys to reach the witness chair up just to the right of Judge Merchan. And the tension and the moment, the gravity, I mean, it was palpable in the room, Neil. Really incredible.
You know, this exchange back and forth about how she felt about Donald Trump, it was very revealing, because I guess the defense in the cross-examination was trying to say, you have an agenda, you hate the guy. Saying, you want him to go to jail. I want him to be held accountable. You want him to go to jail. If he's found guilty, yes. You want him to go to jail, Daniels. If he's found guilty, absolutely. So again and again and again, was she getting flustered by that, or what?
She did not hide her disdain for Trump. That was absolutely no secret. What was really remarkable was the change in demeanor of Stormy Daniels from direct examination, as she was a prosecution witness, to cross-examination, which is when many of those statements that you just referenced were elicited. During direct, when she was being examined by the prosecutors, she was friendly, she was verbose, she was chatty, she was, frankly, Neil, she was entertaining. She was a good talker, so much so that the judge had to remind her, listen to the question and answer the question that was asked of you. Defense making many objections to the points that your prior panelists just made about the relevance of her testimony and so on and so forth. She spoke directly to the jurors and was engaging them with her eye contact, using hand gestures. jurors. So in that way, I would say she was a captivating witness for the jurors. I could see how that would be compelling. It was incredible how quickly that switch flipped. As soon as the cross-examination started by the defense attorneys, she was clipped in her response. She was short. Sometimes she was argumentative, asking for clarification on many questions, insisting that documents that she had already seen being shown to her again. It suggested that she really had some preparation time with prosecutors, and that she was not just there to provide her side of her experience, which she says happened, but also to kind of convey, you know, her version of events through her demeanor. And she did not hide the fact that she does not care for the former president.
Lydia, outstanding reporting and coverage today. Thank you very much for that. You just saw Donald Trump leave the courthouse. I don't know where he's headed. Normally he makes some stops on the way out, not all the time, but we'll let you know what his plans are. We're back with John Yoo and Andrew Chakowski. We know no session tomorrow, John. We do know Thursday will resume, I imagine, with the cross-examination of Stormy Daniels. She's back on the stand. What do you expect?
I think that Trump's lawyers are going to have to come out much more aggressive than they have now. So far, the cross-examination hasn't raised doubts about the facts of Daniels' encounter with President Trump. Again, Daniels has made a devastating accusation against the president. It may not have anything to do with the legal charges, which we all agree are extremely weak, but she has accused the former president of the United States of raping her, and she said it under oath. I think if you've got 2 days where this is going to be out there, it's not just having an effect in the courtroom before the juries, it's going to have an effect in the political world, in the public world. I think that the Trump lawyers, now that they've been dragged into the mud by the DA on this, are going to have to come out and try to destroy that story.
I'm wondering, Andrew, and you and I chatted about it a little bit earlier, why weren't the Trump lawyers more aggressive in objecting to some of the things that she was bringing up? Or did they just wait for cross-examination? Or is the fault really with the judge that he didn't do more to rein this sort of wandering grenade throwing off?
Well, there was a motion prior to trial to limit the testimony of Stormy Daniels. There was a motion this morning prior to her being called to testify to limit her testimony. This morning, even, the judge said that he was putting guardrails on and didn't want to get into the details of things. Now, Alvin Bragg's team totally ignored that, and they pushed into all of the details, finding him in his pajamas and his boxers, her looking through his Dobb kit for Head and Shoulder shampoo and whatnot, completely going into those details. The lawyers often don't want to object repeatedly in front of a jury because it makes them feel like the defense perhaps is hiding something. I don't find that to be the case when I'm defending a case. I like to object all that I can, but I do think that some defense counsel like to hold back in front of the jury so it doesn't create a bad image in front of them. And then the judge, after lunch in the mistrial motion, blamed the defense for not objecting more. I take an exception to that because the defense attorneys did in this case file that pretrial motion, filed the motion before testimony this morning. That should seal the record to keep the judge on his heels to make sure irrelevant and inappropriate information isn't coming in. It shouldn't take additional objections at that point.
And you got to be careful with the objections too, right, John? I mean, you can overdo it, and that can get exasperating for jurors and anyone in the courtroom. Objection, and it might be fully justified, right? But that's a delicate balance, right?
Yes, because Judge Merchan is the king of this courtroom. He's deciding how fast the proceedings are going. He's deciding whether he's going to give any favorable rulings towards the end of the trial towards Donald Trump. So the defense team, just like the prosecution, they want to play ball on Judge Merchan's terms. Yeah. And so they're not going to overdo the objections. They might be saving them because they've made them and the judge has already rejected them. But the problem with that is that's leaving Stormy Daniels' story uncontradicted, unchallenged as to the facts of what happened. And as we already know, that's, I think, the DA's strategy here is just to tie Donald Trump to bad acts, to portray him as a bad man, even if none of those are relevant to the legal criminal charges here.
And if she made a convincing argument, Andrew, that she did have this relationship with her, whatever you want to call it, with the president, she made some compelling case for it because of the details that she was familiar. In the eyes of some of those jurors, you need all of them, of course, they could say, all right, well, if Donald Trump potentially lied about not knowing this woman, what else is he lying about, right?
There is certainly that factor there. And now she has had statements over the years where she denies having a relationship with him. So whether the tawdriness of whether sex occurred happened or not, I don't think matters all that much to the end. We do have to look at what came in about 2011. Even if she's telling the truth that she was approached in this parking lot, that shows that Donald Trump, before ever running for president, had concerns about her story. That would apply to a celebrity. That would apply to his underlying lack of mental responsibility in this case.
Wild stuff. Gentlemen, thank you both very much. Again, the trial resumes on Thursday. One thing that has resumed are these college protests, including a pretty scary one last night at the University of Chicago, as encampments once again are back on, and now activities in Israel that could really bring it back on. The latest after this.
Tell the judge, this is going to happen if you put her on the stand with these broad parameters. It happened. And then the judge said, why don't you ask the jury to forget that it happened? And how are they going to forget that? It's not like you're asking them to forget some CPA's testimony about a notation in a ledger, right? And the troubling thing about this is that they lit a dumpster fire in this courtroom, and the defense asked for the mistrial, and the judge blamed the defense attorneys. And so I can only imagine standing there, and it must have been difficult not to say, I'm sorry, Judge, I'm the attorney that told you not to put her on the stand. I told you that you had too broad of parameters. And then when she did exactly as we suggested you did, you ignore that I have a standing objection to her saying anything in this trial. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, Mershon got what all of us expected. Now, this idea that he can make this cat walk backwards is going to be rather difficult. You've already, had this witness go into every detail, including whether the president wears boxer shorts and he had Old Spice in his bathroom. I mean, that's the level of absurd detail. I mean, we've all seen Craig's office with the gallon of Old Spice, but we don't mention it. But this is a show. But the fact that you would bring in that type of just completely immaterial detail shows how this judge was a mere pedestrian in his courtroom. And then at the end of all of that, to say, God, he literally said, it would have been better if that testimony didn't occur. And you're just sort of looking around like, you were the one that allowed this testimony to occur.
And I can't imagine being someone on the jury. I did read at one point, one of the reporters said, or I think it was one of our producers said that one of the jurors, a woman, had her head in her hands, but I cannot believe that we're having to listen to this.
Interesting. I'm glad to hear that. I wish it were in the courtroom. In fact, I'll be in the courtroom on Thursday and Friday. But look, the testimony that we heard today has absolutely nothing to do with the indictment. The testimony was irrelevant. It was prejudicial. It was not probative. It has nothing to do with how something was filed and how reimbursement to Cohen and whether it was correctly entered in the books. Period. End of the story. This judge saying to the defense attorney, well, you didn't object enough. Look, any judge worth his or her salt, if you see something happening that is going to jeopardize the conviction, you yourself, sua sponte, on your own, will say, I'm going to stop the line of questioning right here.
One of each.
And then what you do is you call the parties to the bench and you say to the defense, to the prosecution, you are moving too close to reversible error here. Let's trim the offenses here a little bit. But Mershon, and I heard one person say on Fox, oh, he's a really experienced judge. He's a fool. He's not an experienced judge the way he's doing this. For him to say, please keep your answers short and listen to the questions while she is laying out what could be another prosecutable offense against Donald Trump that I'm not even going to mention, he is allowing reversible error in. He should have said, I'm going to strike that testimony. There should have been a curative instruction right then and there on the spot. But instead he says, well, I'll think about it, make a request at the time of charge, at the time of my charge. No. And then he sends the jury out and lays out the prosecutor for allowing his testimony in. This judge is either all in on convicting Trump, irrespective of whether it's going to be reversed, and I would bet my house this will be reversed by the Court of Appeals.
One of the things, though, that Greg, is that even if it is reversed, it wouldn't be until after the election. And what they're hoping for is a conviction so that Joe Biden can say in all of the ads and at the debate, oh, well, you're talking about a convicted felon.
What are the odds that an incident from 15 to 20 years ago would now become the object of litigation just months before an election? It's kind of a strange coincidence that the media doesn't really seem to focus on. That might be one question that would make you go, maybe this is political. I gotta say, I love how CNN anchors blush and are shocked by pajamas and spanking. I mean, one of your employees pleasured himself on Zoom. You kept him on there. One of your producers, I think, was arrested for grooming kids. Yes. It's funny watching the media act like Puritans, right? Go to any media event, and it's like the Playboy mansion with ugly people. So it's like, it's just, they got the paws all over you, they're drunk. This is porn for sexless Democrats. Listening to testimony from an aging sex worker about Trump in a courtroom, you have everything. It's almost as erotic as listening to NPR while feeding grapes to your cat with myocarditis. The court case is really about convincing jurors that Trump is a bad guy for sleeping around. It's not about breaking laws, because no laws were broken. If Trump were a woman, the prosecution would be accused of slut-shaming. Huh? That's quite a theory. Again, he's not charged for the hush money. It's not about Stormy. It's about an accounting method for a legal payment in a business record that had no known category. That's it. What Stormy has to do with it is nothing. All that is frosting for the media.
Jesse Waters, give you last word.
Fact check, Trump does not use Old Spice. He has his own deodorant line. It's called Success. Someone gifted it to me in a book signing. And Turley, cats can walk backwards. I don't know about that analogy. Michael Avenatti dropped a bombshell from behind bars today, and take it for what it's worth. I'm just conveying what he said. He made an allegation that a producer wanted to do a documentary on Stormy Daniels and called him on a recorded line and said, would you like to participate? And he said, well, I don't know, is she getting paid for the documentary? Because if she is, it's probably not fair and I'm not going to do it. And the producer says, yeah, she is going to get paid for the documentary, but that's because she owes Trump hundreds of thousands of dollars in judgment, and she's just trying to make ends meet. But she has a way of concealing the money from Trump's lawyers. What they're going to do is, and what they have done, Michael says, is that they have optioned the rights to her book. They've taken the proceeds and set up a fraudulent LLC under Stormy's daughter's name, and that's how they're going to hide the money from Trump's lawyers.
Amazing.
If this is true, then she's guilty of bad record keeping and fraud. So I don't know if that's going to be pursued by Alvin Bragg, probably not. But Trump is barreling towards breaking this gag order. I don't see within the next 48 hours how he does not do it. You're saying you can't criticize the government? That's what the judge is saying. You cannot criticize the government, the court, or the prosecution.
Good evening, Brett. This case was supposed to go to trial in Fort Pierce, Florida on May 20th. That is no longer happening. That date has been pushed back, and while there is not a new trial date set, Judge Eileen Cannon has set some deadlines, many deadlines, at least a dozen, going on late into the summer, pushing the trial back at least until the end of July. In an order just late this afternoon, about an hour or so ago, Judge Cannon announced she's extending several key deadlines in this case that take it out, as I said, till the end of July. This is the case involving the classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago. Special Counsel Jack Smith hoped this and the other trial involving the former president here in Washington, D.C., over alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election results would go to trial before Election Day in November. The Supreme Court, Brett, is currently weighing whether Trump should be immune from federal prosecution in that election interference case in D.C., meaning that case has been on hold for several months. The justices are expected to decide by the end of June. The former president is hoping to avoid both trials before the November election, and he may get his wish. If Judge Cannon continues to extend deadlines in the Florida trial and does not set a date that could push things back post-election. If the Supreme Court gives sort of a mixed ruling or a ruling favorable to Donald Trump, that could push things back here in Washington, D.C. The bottom line, another day, another delay means just we're getting that much closer to the election.
Brett?
David, we had the story yesterday of these the documents and the handling of those documents by the FBI, and that the former president's lawyers had filed a motion on that very handling. That could be part of all of this as well.
Yeah, that could be part of it. There were some questions from the Trump legal team that we reported last night about the chain of custody of some of these documents. Some of the documents taken from Mar-a-Lago by the FBI had some cover pages that didn't necessarily match what was actually in the documents. So if there's any kind of concern about the chain of custody, Trump's legal team saying, wait a minute, we want to make sure those documents were in the proper chain of custody the entire time, which in that case could push the judge to hold some witnesses and potentially bring in more people for that aspect of the case, but that certainly weighs into it, Brett.
Okay, David Spahn with the breaking news out of the Justice Department. David, thanks. The woman at the center of the activity that led to the alleged fraud for which former President Donald Trump is facing trial took the stand today. Adult film actress Stormy Daniels testified in detailed and at times graphic language about their alleged sexual encounter 18 years ago. He denies it. The judge has rejected the defense request for a mistrial. Correspondent Nate Foy is outside the state Supreme Court again in New York tonight with the latest. Good evening, Nate.
Good evening, Brett. Adult film actress Stormy Daniels did not hide her disdain for former President Donald Trump while testifying today. Trump called the case a false ancient history after his lawyers asked for a mistrial because of prejudicial testimony from Daniels. On the witness stand today, adult film actress Stormy Daniels explained in extreme detail meeting and allegedly having sex with former President Donald Trump in 2006.
This was a very big day, a very revealing day. As you see, the case is totally falling apart. They have nothing on books and records, and even something that should bear very little relationship to the case.
Trump's lawyers moved for a mistrial, claiming the jury heard damaging testimony unrelated to the charges Trump faces. Judge Juan Merchan told the court, quote, "I agree that it would have been better if some of these things had been left unsaid. I don't believe we're at a point where a mistrial is warranted." Trump's son Eric defended his father after attending court in person, posting on X, quote, "The 15 Manhattan prosecutors are sitting at their table and behind in the courthouse pews, giddy by this salacious show. This is the intent, not the merits, nor the fact that this entire case is a massive extortion play." Daniels testified she met Trump at a celebrity golf tournament, then saw him several times after their alleged affair, including at Trump Tower. At the time, Daniels thought Trump could help her career. But today, during cross-examination, Daniels acknowledged she hates Trump and previously posted online she would dance down the street if he went to jail. Trump's lawyers presented another post from Daniels, who wrote, quote, "I'll never give that orange turd a dime," referring to legal fees she owes Trump for a separate defamation lawsuit. Trump attorney Susan Neckles asked Daniels, quote, "You despise him and make fun of him?" Daniels responded, quote, "Because he started it." Daniels will again take the stand when court resumes Thursday morning at 9:30. She'll answer more questions from Trump's attorneys, and the prosecution has already signaled they have more questions for Daniels as well. Brett?
Nate Foy outside the courthouse. Nate, thanks. President Biden today said there is no place on campus or anywhere else for what he calls a ferocious surge of anti-Semitism. Island College. And the mayor of Washington, D.C. is rebuffing a request for assistance from the head of George Washington University, just blocks from the White House. Correspondent Mark Meredith is at GW tonight with the latest. Good evening, Mark.
Brett, good evening to you. Protest camps like the one that have been set up here at GW, they are not only still standing, they are growing larger, even as multiple universities like GW are vowing to become more aggressive and holding those responsible for building these encampments accountable.
Acting before sunrise, police removed dozens of tents and gear set up on the University of Chicago's campus. The move shocked some pro-Palestinian protesters, some of whom had camped out for more than a week.
They waited like cowards until the crowd was gone, and then they snuck up on people to attack them!
Near Boston, similar encampments at MIT and Harvard still stand. Even as the schools threaten students who don't disperse with suspension.
Harvard is choosing to mass discipline its students rather than responding to numerous good faith efforts to reach out and to speak and have a conversation.
In the nation's capital, dozens of tents still cover central sections of George Washington University, and demonstrators say they have no plans to leave anytime soon.
We will be here until our demands are met. We have a great community rallying around us who are ready to uplift our demands.
Those demands include a meeting with GW's president, but school leaders are not interested. In a statement, GW says the protest, quote, has been co-opted by individuals who are largely unaffiliated with our community and do not have our community's best interest in mind. The school wants DC's Mayor Muriel Bowser to clear the area. So far, she's refusing to step in.
My constitutional responsibility is to make sure that people can safely protest.
Bowser will testify about the situation when she visits Capitol Hill Wednesday.
Make no mistake, anti-Semitism is discrimination.
Today, Education Secretary Miguel Cardona told lawmakers he's aware Jewish American students are worried for their safety. And while Cardona stopped short of condemning ongoing protests, he says there should be limits.
If the university directs them to leave, they should leave.
Today, protest organizers held a college class of their own, telling demonstrators what they should do if police were to come out here and make any sort of mass arrest. DC police, they are nearby, but there is no indication, Brett, at this hour that they plan to break up this gathering anytime soon. Instead, the crowds are just growing larger by the hour. Brett.
Mark Meredith at GW. Mark, thanks. The House Speaker and the Republican lawmakers seeking to remove him from his office met for a second straight day behind closed doors. Congressional correspondent Aisha Hasni is on Capitol Hill tonight with the talks between Speaker Mike Johnson and the 3 GOP representatives who could attempt to push him out. Good evening, Aisha.
Right, good evening to you. Another day of lengthy talks, but still no action or, in fact, even a timeline over this motion to vacate. This afternoon, Speaker Johnson met with Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, and Paul Gosar for nearly 2 hours discussing their list of demands. They want the Speaker to implement something known as the Hastert Rule by only putting bills on the floor that have support from the majority of the majority. They also do not want any more Ukraine funding. They want to defund special counsels like Jack Smith, and they're also demanding that Johnson pass a government funding bill before Election Day that enacts a 1% spending cut across the board. Now, Greene originally said that she was triggering that motion to vacate this week, but has since softened her stance to now no deadline.
We didn't give a specific timeline, but it's pretty short.
Now, we caught up with the Speaker today who says he is not negotiating any kind of a deal. He's simply discussing ideas.
Look, we're talking through ideas and suggestions. This is what I do with all members all the time, so there's nothing unusual about this.
On any of these demands, the Ukraine.
We're talking through a lot of ideas.
So Johnson is framing these talks as normal member conversations, but the attention that he's giving these 3 is now starting to frustrate others within the conference.
I think the Speaker's going to create a revolt if he caters to any one group who, threatens him with those type of actions.
So, Brett, we await to see what the Speaker does next, but so far, no more meetings between these 2 sides for the rest of the week. Brett.
Aisha Hasni live on Capitol Hill. Aisha, thank you. Interest rate optimism fueled mixed results on Wall Street today. The Dow gaining 32. The S&P 500 was up 7. The Nasdaq lost 17. Up next, we look at the Israeli military operation in Gaza and whether it is the major offensive the world has been watching for. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around this country are covering tonight. Fox 23 in Tulsa as 1 person is killed in a tornado in Barnsdall, Oklahoma, as severe weather moves through Greene County. Officials say first responders worked to rescue people who were trapped in a hotel there. There was also major damage to residential areas, as you see here, and medical facilities. Fox 5 in New York has the man accused of shooting and killing police detective Jonathan Diller in March is arraigned on an indictment charging him with first-degree murder and first-degree attempted murder. 34-year-old Guy Rivera was also indicted on weapons charges. He faces life in prison without the possibility of parole if convicted. And this is a live look at Salt Lake City from our affiliate, Fox 13 out there. One of the big stories there tonight, U.S. News & World Report names Utah the best state in America. It's the 2nd year in a row for this honor. Rankings are determined by analyzing the state's performance in 8 categories: natural environment, fiscal stability, education, infrastructure, healthcare, economy, opportunity, and crime and corrections. Congratulations, Utah. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.